Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Lens. I'm JD.
I'm David.
And we're back yet again. So thanks for tuning back in. Thanks for looking us up on iTunes and Google Play and all that kind of good stuff. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and follow the podcast, and we'll try to bring you the best information we can on photography that we can. Dave's basically a working wedding photographer. I myself am a working concert photographer and event photographer. And we're going to share our experience with you, and we're going to talk about something today that lots of people kind of talk about, but also kind of never really talk about, and that is basically pricing and selling your work and all that kind of good stuff, you know, how you make money in it. A lot of people just don't, a lot of people keep that stuff tight to their vest. You know.
That is true. It's almost like it's like a secret that you die with. Not a whole lot of people is going to share with you how they kind of price their work or value the work. I mean, it's so big of a gray area if you actually think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what's a value for me. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the same for yourself.
Right.
Right. So I mean, there's so many things to consider when you're actually even just pricing your own work. I mean, it all depends on which market you're trying to aim at too, right? Are you aiming at a high-end client, low-end clients? You know, if you start doing free work, I mean, you're going to be known as the free photographer.
Right.
I mean, everybody's going to come get you, of course, but you're always going to be known as a free photographer, and nobody wants to be labeled that.
Right. And there's something that I always tell people as well, is that you don't want to undercharge a lot of times for your work. You know, if you shoot too low, and you know, you'll probably find that you get a lot of work if you're charging too little as well. However, when it comes time to increase that is probably the worst thing, especially if you have repeat clients, right? So if you're charging, we'll say $150 an hour, and then all of a sudden you go to $250 an hour. It's a big jump, and you'll lose some people in that transition. A lot of people ask why. Whereas if you are high and sometimes drop down, and people know that that's your rate, and sometimes come down and let them know that, it's a sort of a different thing. And that's you know, like myself, I use a floating point. You know, to be frank, is basically my rate is $150 an hour. Sometimes knowing your budget, I will be able to finagle things a little bit. And work within your guidelines and sort of go from there.
Well, somewhat you got to go with the flow.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to find a good balance between the amount of work you can handle, right? I mean, you can undercharge for a little while, and then all of a sudden you get swamped.
Yeah.
You're going to have to kind of off balance that a bit, and you're going to have to start charging a bit more, hoping, you know, you're going to lose a client here and there, but I'd rather work less and make more.
Yeah.
Well, like anybody else, you know, like.
And you have to work in how much you're working and how much you want to make in a year. Like, I mean, you know, an average wage, I would say, you know, in the market that we're in is Calgary. I mean, if you're a photographer and you're making less than, I would say, $50,000 a year, you're probably not doing too well.
Well, I mean, there is a base cost. I mean, you still got to have to calculate your gear, your time, your business licenses, you know, your monthly subscription with Adobe. You got to put all that together, and that's pretty much your minimum, bare minimum, right? I mean, that's not even including taxes and stuff, right? So all of that has to be in consideration. Nobody wants to run a losing business. Yeah. Right, you got to cover your costs, most bare minimum, right?
Yeah, so, and when I give that $50,000 sort of evaluation too, I'm talking about you're paid as an employee of your own company, and you're walking away with a $50,000 salary. Yeah. That means that you're making much more than that, especially if you've got office space, you've got gear costs, you might have travel, you've got all those kind of things. So, I mean, it all adds up. So, I mean, you can think about, you know, how much you want to make, and you've got to divide if you're going to work a 40-hour week. And divide it into that. And that 40 hours, you know, nobody's working that 40 hours full time. Yeah. Sort of as a photographer, you're doing phone calls, emails, meetings, all that kind of stuff. And then you're probably working, you know, 15, 20, 25 hours. And then that's, you know, sort of the flip end of things, right?
Well, with a wedding photographer as well, you have to season, you have to look after too, right? Because you're at your peak season, you got your low, you got to kind of offset that too, right, with your costs.
And not only that, with a wedding photographer, you really have to look at the fact is there's only 52 weekends in a year, right? Again, like you said, you're not going to be probably shooting at Christmas or anything like that. Most people aren't going to take that, so you're probably down to 51. There's probably a couple other times in there that's going to, you're probably trying to jam everything into 4 months, especially with the weather the way it is in this market as well. So, I mean, you really have to look at your pricing there as well. And that's why wedding photographers, and I mean, we talked about wedding photographers and pricing in the first show. That's why a lot of wedding photographers are expensive because it's one weekend. They get one weekend. That's it. They can't work 6 weddings in one weekend. They work one weekend. It's typically one wedding. If they're lucky, maybe they work 2. Maybe if they're really lucky, they work a 3.
I wouldn't even take on 3 weddings per weekend myself just because the workload. I mean, just the amount of photos you're going through per wedding. I mean, can you do it? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can, but I highly doubt you're going to be able to sit in front of a monitor to edit all 3 weddings. I'm pretty sure you're going to be outsourcing some of your photo or your editing.
Oh yeah, and that's part of business as well. Like, I mean, if you're going to do that as well, you got to calculate those kind of things into the cost as well, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's what works for you. I mean, for me, I am a solo deal in the sense that I work primarily by myself. I do have people that I work with. If I do video work, there are people that I can bring in for a crew. But, I mean, essentially it's myself. What you pay for primarily is me. And then if you're bringing it in or if your project's big enough and I have to bring in other people, the cost, I mean, obviously goes up. Like I said, when it's a floating rate, it's, $150 an hour for me. But, if we got a 10-man crew, it's still not $150 an hour because then it's, we're all working for McDonald's wages and that's just not going to fly. Right?
Yeah. So when it comes to value of work, it also comes to the quality of work and your demand too, right? I mean, it's a huge gray area that even if you ask 10 photographers will probably give you 10 different answers. Yeah. It all depends where you're at and where you're comfortable, right? Yeah. An amateur is not going to be charging $150 an hour. They might start with maybe $50 an hour. Yeah. I mean, it all depends on your demand, right? Like, it's like anything. Yeah. I can charge $500 an hour, but if I'm not getting any business,
right?
I making?
It's what the market can bear. But especially when you're looking at top end photographers, if you're just starting out, you're probably not going to want to jump into that pool right away because there's going to be a certain expectation. I mean, if you can hit that expectation, all the power to you. Run with it. But I would say the vast majority of people that jump in, right away, there's a bit of a learning curve, and it doesn't necessarily come out how they think it is, on the other end. And I mean, depending on what you're doing, I mean, if you're shooting corporate headshots and, that kind of thing, I mean, that's not really what I would call high pressure. You've got all the time in the world. You've got studio kind of setups, and it's that person's going to sit there and listen to you. If you're doing event stuff or weddings, you're talking about much more high pressure situations. You've got one shot typically to get it right. Yeah. And if you miss it, if you miss, the first kiss, I pretty much guarantee you that, the bride and groom are not going to be terribly happy with you, especially if they're paying, and I know some premium wedding photographers here are $8,000 to $10,000 for the day. If you're charging that kind of money and you miss that stuff, they are not going to be very happy with you. And you're not going to get good business afterwards because the expectation is there. The expectation is a game because I am paying this much money. You didn't meet that. So, I mean, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of those guys that are charging those $8,000 to $10,000, a lot of times it's not just them shooting. There's teams, all sorts of stuff.
I've been through that myself this summer. I believe I told you this story before, where I hired a photographer. Yeah, he brought in all this gear and stuff. He knows he has a time limit, but he still wasted a lot of time setting up studio stuff. And at the end of the day, when I looked at his work, I mean, calling him an amateur, it's a compliment. I mean, his work is well below that. I mean, it almost seems like some dude just bought a fancy camera and just started snapping. I mean, I'm not paying professional price for it. Yeah. Right. Luckily he had on his website, if you're not happy with his work, you don't pay a single dime. But I mean, that's not a way you should take your business at all.
No, I would never put anything like that on my website.
I mean, that just shows that you're incompetent of doing your job, right? And Yeah, I mean, at the end, I was quite disappointed, and thank God I found another photographer real quick just to kind of fill in for that last day there, and it ended up costing me more money.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not cost me any money towards that photographer. Yeah, does that kind of tame things a little? Sort of, but you know, word still gets around.
Yeah.
And you definitely don't want to run a business that way. And this is a perfect example where he overvalued his work, and at the end of the day,
Oh, it's going to hurt him.
it's going to hurt him big time. Right?
It's going to hurt him. You know, it's you know, it's not good when you don't meet your clients' expectations.
Yeah.
Ever. It's you know, and I mean, sometimes it happens, and you know, it's all about how you deal with that as well. But I mean, like I said, if you're going to charge sort of like premium pricing, you better be sure that you come out with premium product,
quality
right?
work, right? So,
You know.
and the second photographer came in. You know, she followed all her packages and stuff. She actually spent more time. She spent an extra hour with us just to get the photos, because my wife's dress, it's kind of like a mermaid style, so she has, you know, a lot of issues moving around, and she understood that. Yeah, it takes extra time because, you know, we're not able to kind of run around to different locations real quick.
Yeah.
But she never charged me.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I appreciate all the work she has done, right? And I appreciate that she didn't charge me, and I gave her extra $150 just to cover her time, right? So, I mean, as a client, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Than saying, oh, you don't like my stuff, I'm not going to charge you. I'm like, no, you never run a business that way. That's just bad news.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, customer service is a huge part of it. I mean, it's dealing with people is a huge part of it. I mean, like I said, I mean, you're not shooting 40, like it's not like a regular job. You punch in and you work 40 hours, you punch out. It's, you know, you shoot for a certain period of time, you're editing, you're dealing with people, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like myself, I deal with, you know, publicists, record labels, magazines, all that kind of stuff. And there's constant communication sort of going on. And I spend a ton of time in emails. You know, it's.
I mean, those are all considerations when you value your work, right?
Yeah.
How to price yourself.
Well, it all works into the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's, you know, like the number may seem big, you know, like if I say it's $150 an hour, people are like, I wish I made $150 an hour, but that $150 covers not the 1 hour that I work. It covers, you know, some post editing, you know, all the time that we spent on the phone. So it's probably dispersed over 3, possibly 4, maybe more hours, depending on what it is.
I come across that a lot, especially dealing with, you know, couples and stuff. Oh, why do you charge so much? You know, $5,000 just for a day of shooting. I'm like, and then you start explaining to them, you know, all the work that goes behind it. You know, even they don't understand until I actually tell them, I mean, this meeting right now, you know, the gas, the time that I'm spending with you, an hour for the consultation, this is all done for free.
Yeah.
All right. Like then once you kind of explain to them, you know, why you charge the way you charge, then they start to kind of accept it. They kind of value even photography more. So I think this is the kind of education part to your clients as well. I mean, you know, some guys will come up to me and say, oh, my uncle can charge us less. He can charge me $1,000. I'm like, you're more than welcome to hire your uncle. Yeah. I'm not going to argue with that. Yeah. I just can't do it myself. And if they decide to come with me, then this is the way, this is how much I'm going to charge, and this is my structure. You know, I'll explain to them why I charge the amount I do. And nobody's out to have like a business just go bankrupt, right? So
absolutely. So if you're starting out, there are other ways than, you know, basically having a client sort of, you know, coming and hiring you to do something specific. There are other options that are out there for you. I mean, people can delve into early on, and it might actually be a good way for you to get some feedback on your work is do things like stock photography. You know, you're not going to make yourself a fortune by any stretch. I mean, you get pennies on the photograph, but it's through repeat sales in which you make your money. So, you know, it's setting up, getting a nice shot, taking a shot. So, I mean, you know, you have those options. And the thing is with micro stock or stock photography is that you're typically submitting it. It's going to somebody's going to take a look at it, and they're going to say, this is good, yes, or no, it has these issues. And they'll typically give you actually feedback saying, you know, it's you've got noise, or you've got, you know, it's like your lighting is off, or it's overexposed, or all those kind of stuff. They will actually give you some form of response back. So, I mean, if you are starting out, it is actually a kind of a good way to get some free feedback in a sense, and potentially make, like I said, you know, like, you know, I think some of these things pay like $0.25 an image which is nothing. But I mean,
the thing is, for me, that's something that I never grew out of. I'm always consistently asking other photographers, hey, what do you think about my work? Right? It's good feedback, especially from other professionals, because, you're not out in the public. If you know quite a few photographers, they'll give you an honest kind of answer, rather than kind of hide it. So even if you post it online, some people might be nice to you, oh yeah, it's good, but then they'll tell you, a little bit thing here, a little bit of thing there, just so that they don't insult you. But if you actually know a few photographers that you actually trust, you enjoy their work as well. Sometimes I even sit down with a few photographers and I just kind of we share each other's work. I'm like, what do you think of this? How do you take this photo or that photo, right? And then you learn from that.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's with photography. A lot of people think that if you know the technical side of things, you're set to go. I'm like, no, there's so much more into it.
Yeah.
Especially in the artistic side of things, and those are the things that they do not teach you in school.
Yeah,
they kind of teach you the kind of the rule of the thirds or whatever, but when it comes to artistic side, it's hard to interpret. Like I myself look at a lot of photos and I deconstruct it. It's no brainer, right? But then how does that photograph make you feel? All that kind of stuff. You have to make your own judgment to that too, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you can throw it on the web, but you can have 10 guys that doesn't know anything about photography judging your photograph also on top, right? So it's a fine balance.
I mean, the one thing is too is that you have to realize that when you put your work out there, that you are going to get people that are going to critique it that maybe aren't photographers and stuff like that, and some people are going to like it and they're not.
Yeah.
And that's actually good to see if people actually like your work.
That's true.
When we're talking about critiques from photographers, I always look for a more technical sort of advice, right? Saying like, maybe you should have pumped more light into the situation. Maybe you should run a higher ISO. Your image has got a little bit of motion blur. It would have been nice if you had cranked up your shutter speed a little bit to get that little more sharpness, or vice versa. I would like to get a little more motion in it and slowed it down. That's the kind of stuff. And you're still going to make your decisions from that point on, sort of what you do. You're gonna decide what your style is. People do develop styles, and stylistically you can see stuff like I always look at people's like other concert photographers stuff, and stylistically I can tell sort of who's who. There's some people that have some very distinct styles I can see, and I pretty much know who took it. And I always take a look, because I'm always looking at other concert photographers more for angles to see what they've done. A lot of times we're shooting the exact same thing. There might be a couple of us, and I just want to see what they got in comparison, right? It's just it's natural, and you learn off it, right? Like it's like, that's a good shot. I wish I had got that shot. I wish I had things. But you keep that in mind, and you take that into your next show. And it's a continual evolution and sort of growing of things. And I've been doing this for years, and I shoot hundreds of shows in a year. But I tell you, every show, if I know who's there, right, or if there's somebody else there, and I'm not the only person, I'm definitely taking a look at their stuff, or I'll look at somebody else who's maybe worked with them before, all that kind of stuff. You just want to consume, and it's all part of pushing yourself forward and making yourself better. Because if you just think that you're good, that's to me, that's the time you take your camera, you put it in the case, you put it in the closet, and you go do something else, because it's
and you find those guys too, who has a big huge ego. I'm good, I've been published, this and that, blah blah blah.
That's great.
You look at the work, like you said, you can tell exactly that's his work.
Yeah.
But where is it going? Is it improving? Is it is it going downhill? Photography is like anything else. You have to move along with the flow too, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't do the same thing day in, day out. You might be good at doing that one thing, but
well, you can make a living off the one thing though.
Right? Don't get me wrong. Like I've seen some really horrible photographers. They make great money because they're good in business. They're good in marketing. Yeah. And I've seen some really, really
talented people that don't make
doesn't.
anything because they don't know how to sell themselves or the business aspect of it, right? So there's definitely a balance, and that's something as well when you're starting out is learning the business is probably going to be the most interesting and difficult part, because you really kind of have to put yourself out there.
And nobody has the same story, right?
Yeah.
That's a fun thing about photography, is that everybody has their own road.
Right.
To
everybody's
walk, right?
point of entry is very much different.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started, I started out with nightclub photography, and it's quite a struggle. But then the more you do it, the more you get comfortable, and you just have to play around with different scenarios. I mean, see what's good, see what works, what doesn't, right? So that's why I said you can ask 10 different photographers how to value your work, 10 different photographers to tell you something different. At the end of the day, you got to judge your own work. You got to value how much you think you're worth. And sometimes the market decides that, hey, you know, you're worth that much, and sometimes you get the negative side. You know, no, you're not worth that much. But I mean, photography it's an art, right? What values a painting to be tens of thousands of dollars, or a painting that's worth $100?
Yeah, I think that's us being told that it is time. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you are watching this in the dark, because we have the camera shut down because it's out of, I think, memory probably. So we will wrap things up here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm JD.
I'm David.
See ya. I don't know why I'm pointing to the camera, because it's off.